Sexism is the common enemy of both masculism and feminism. Sexist views confine men and women into socially constructed roles that are oppressive, as individuals are constrained by expectations of behavior taught within ideological state apparatuses such as film. Biologically essentialist views are used to justify this oppression, channeling males and females into gender-specific roles and habitual ideals, which order and maintain the status quo in society. Film, through representation, naturalizes these views so that they are accepted as given and inevitable. For example, the standard model of the male represents aggression, strength, leadership, and a lack of emotion, as informed by the male's superior biological strength. This directs men into a dominant role in society, maintaining patriarchal ideology. Men who transgress from this structure by being weak, emotional, or subordinate to the female can be fetishized, sexualized, or reduced to an obstacle that must be overcome by a more manly subject. Women, meanwhile, are constrained within the submissive role acquired for patriarchal dominance and are portrayed as weak, unstable, and emotional. In the past, females who transcended this role would also be represented as transgressive, as in films noirs such as Double Indemnity, where a femme fatale character allows for subsequent punishment and denunciation for her power over men. Alternatively or simultaneously, the female would also be fetishized and sexualized, as in Barbarella, where the female protagonist, Jane Fonda, transcends her traditional role by becoming the hero, potentially threatening the patriarchal order of power. However, the threat is neutralized through the sexualization and fetishization of her image. The film is also set in the future, marking the security of male dominance in times to come. Therefore, ideological notions of gender are reinforced and affirmed to strengthen social structures of role and status. Feminist movements have reduced the dominance of maelstrom views in society, aiding female subjectivity by working toward equity between genders and eroding the structures that constrain the female in her submissive role. Feminism has contributed to a postmodern culture, with its projection of alternative narratives that reject all-embracing systems such as patriarchy by refiguring female identity. Women, increasingly aware of their rights and choices, are allowed more freedom to form an identity beyond the oppressive demands of patriarchy and express their concerns so that they can initiate social change. The female has begun to enter traditional realms of the male and assert her own dominance by embodying traditional male characteristics and/or preserving conventional female traits. Popular feminist awareness has created the anti-sexist man who tries to abide by non-sexist ideologies in response to feminist pressure, which asks that the female be seen on equal terms, aiding her entrance into male-dominated realms of employment. Women, therefore, are less likely to be constrained within the submissive role acquired for patriarchal dominance. However, it can be conceded that the process of full female equality is still progressing, with the notion of a glass ceiling evident at higher levels of business or politics. The increased awareness of male subjectivity in structures of control and authority makes sexism more noticeable, and therefore challengeable, on behalf of the female in the post-feminist climate. Feminism has provided relief from the pressures of gender expectations dictated by biologically essentialist views, and has leveled accusations of sexism against those who persist with oppressive notions of femininity. This is no bad thing, of course, but in the absence of a male movement, do men have the same freedom and protection from sexism? Are they able to access the female realm naturalistically? The answers to these questions may reveal sexism against men and highlight a detrimental form of oppression against the male subject. Masculism is an approach that identifies and examines inequalities in society to reveal prejudice against men. It responds to feminism and aspires to provide a balance that ensures neither gender is oppressed by equivalently concentrating on male experience. Masculism does not reverse feminism by stating society has matriarchal dominance, but posits a society of both matriarchal and patriarchal rule. Therefore, the notion is that the world is not sexist, but it is bisexist. Both sexes are bound within restrictive roles. For example, His role is to protect the family and hunt food, while she creates a family and gathers food. However, feminist writers populate the critical discourse of film studies with approaches that counter sexism against women. There is little written on sexist, exploitative representations of the male. There is much discussion on masculinity and how the male is represented, but only a diminutive number of those critiques are in a truly masculist vein. As a result, the feminist view that women see the world as patriarchal, sexist, and male-dominated has become the whole picture, so that the world is patriarchal, sexist, and male-dominated. The fact that feminism is portrayed as the whole picture is the starting point for much sexism against men, and masculism needs to have parity of esteem with this approach if true equality between the sexes is to be achieved. Feminist critics such as Laura Mulvey, for example, reveal how women are represented in film to be objectified and merely looked at by the male. Mulvey's essay Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema works as an active critique of female representation, revealing sexism in that the cinematic codes and formative external structures support a masculist ideal. This contributes to the challenging of previously naturalized forms of oppression by undermining the notion of film as an objective representation of reality. Such challenges have been absorbed into postmodern culture, and the previously marginalized voice of the female can be privileged. However, this deprivileges the male voice in his lack of response, risking an imbalance between the genders and a possible all-embracing female narrative that oppresses the male to a greater extent in the future, as the feminist view is the whole picture. The multitude of critical approaches in a postmodern culture should ensure the masculist approach's inclusion, yet this currently is not the case in film criticism's discourse. The following study will begin to address this imbalance, providing a critique of oppressive representations of the male in modern Hollywood cinema. The lack of the masculist approach in academic film criticism has made it too comfortable for the male to be objectified without challenge and guided into oppressive role structures. A similarly argumentative style to feminist writers needs to be adopted to confront these oppressions head-on and encourage the spectator's active consideration of how the male is represented in film in a post-feminist climate. This will provide new evidence so that the male can point to any perceived oppression with added support. Marginalized masculist views and concerns will be foregrounded to adapt theoretically grounded frameworks of film analysis, such as the film apparatus, narratology, and star study. This will highlight the validity of the masculist perspective. The eventual aim is to increase awareness of sexist representations of the male in film and open the door for others to challenge those representations so that the masculist approach can be absorbed into film criticism. As discourse and the notion of gender equality can progress, as feminism will no longer be the whole picture, but an equal half.
Buy now on Amazon.